Welcome everyone to another Observability Lab. Today's topic is, you can see it on the screen, what is OpenPipeline? But not only what is OpenPipeline, we will learn how it fits into the architecture, why we built it, and how you can leverage it. And I couldn't find a better person to demo all this and talk us through it than Thomas. Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning, Andy. Thanks for having me here, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about OpenPipeline.
Yeah. Hey, I would say, let's jump right in. Can you fill us in what is OpenPipeline and why we built it?
Absolutely. So OpenPipeline is the new ingest for Dynatrace, for the new Dynatrace platform. And it's a very ambitious project by Dynatrace. We started a bit over 2 years ago. I'm very proud to have released it a bit more than half a year ago. So we're still in a very early phase, and Dynatrace has a lot of investment going on here. So we have a large team. We have a great team. I'm really happy to work with all those people, brilliant people. So we even created our own data structure for that to be more efficient, to be more scalable. So yeah, we have lots in store for the coming time, and I'm happy to talk about the current state today. Giving an overview, and as we agreed before, we will make a follow-up video where we can go into a demo, hands-on, how to configure OpenPipeline in for the most important cases.
Exactly, and that's also a great reminder, folks. If you're watching this and you want to see the live hands-on video, then just look at the description of the video. We add every relevant link to the description.
Perfect. So let's get started. Now, OpenPipeline is the ingest for the Dynatrace platform, the ingest for Grail. So all the data that you see in Grail went through OpenPipeline before, and it gives you as a customer the ability to manipulate and the data in almost any way that you need. So we're talking about normalizing formats from different sources. We're talking about cleaning it up so that there's no sensitive data. We're talking about removing noise, reducing cost, all those things you can do in OpenPipeline. So it manages the ingest of data into Grail. It's optimized for streaming ingest, so it's not a classic ETL solution, where you take a batch of records and move it from some place to another. It's optimized for streaming large-scale data. We're talking about a petabyte or more of data per day, so this is really large. It's optimized for real time as well. So it's we're talking about less than a second of ingest time that OpenPipeline takes. And it's the central source of all Dynatrace components when it comes to anything, any functionality that relies on data at ingest time.
Cool.
So Smartscape, Davis as it's listed, but also a session aggregation service for digital experience, for example, or vulnerability service of AppSec. All those services can tap into OpenPipeline, read from the ingest, and work with the ingested data.
Perfect. I also wanted to quickly highlight here, and let me just try this to make this a little bit bigger. From the left to the right, I see, as you mentioned, right, any type of data that goes into Dynatrace, whether it's the one agent, whether it is open telemetry. That means I work a lot with the cloud native community. Open telemetry is a very standard way to collect data. That means we can also use our OTel support to stream the data to Dynatrace. It would then go into OpenPipeline, and we can still then, as you said, manipulate, enrich, extract all the data. Or if you're just sending data through the Dynatrace APIs, I think it's a really nice visual to show really how OpenPipeline operates. I guess the next thing is, how does it fit in the overall architecture?
Yes, exactly. So this is a picture of the Dynatrace platform at a high level. In the center, you see Grail, our data storage, our highly scalable and super flexible data storage that you can query with DQL. And you see to the left, there's OpenPipeline. So all the data, and as you said, I think this is really important to emphasize that we're open to all kinds of data sources. So it's not only about APM anymore and logs. We're talking about business data. We're talking about analytics data. You can all feed that into Dynatrace, funnel it through OpenPipeline, and then have it in Grail in one place to join data, to have consistent access management. I think this is a really, really important thing for our customers. Having proper teams, proper team permissions, and having it all in one place. So I think for that to understand, the most important thing to understand is that Grail is divided into data types on one hand. So we have these typical signals that you see in OpenTelemetry as well: logs, spans, metrics, events. And then each of those signals, we call them data types, can be divided into buckets. So when data comes in, you decide in which bucket it should go. And buckets are really great for managing retention. So you might have debug logs that you only want to keep for maybe 10 days or so. And then you might have audit logs that you want to keep for several years. And you just funnel them into different buckets. And it's also connected with access rights as well. So retention time and access rights buckets are great for those. And controlled in OpenPipeline. So what's the value of OpenPipeline? Why would you even go into the application or into the interface, or can also do it via API? Config as code, very important here. What can you do? So you want to reduce cost and noise in your storage. So you remove, filter, aggregate, drop data, things that are outdated, things that you're sending twice, things that are maybe, as we said already, debug logs. And it's not only about full records, but also about parts of a record that you don't want to keep and that's not useful to you. So you reduce it, you remove it, and you reduce your cost. And it's not only about cost, but it's also about making the analysis easier and more streamlined. Because when your data is better structured and when your data contains less noise, there's more signal, and then it's easier to analyze. Really critical for customers, especially in regulated industries, is to meet security and privacy requirements. It's important for everybody, but especially there. So we remove, filter, mask, hash data, sensitive data, private PII data. So all of these things you want to remove or you want to mask, depending on how you later use it. And you can do that in OpenPipeline. You can increase information value. So there's a text line coming in, a log line coming in. If you structure that log line, then you increase the value because it's easier to analyze. It's easier to aggregate a metric from it, and easier to query. Then you can even enrich it with geo information, for example. So we offer a service where we're using it internally. We will offer it for custom configuration later on, where you map the IP address to a geolocation. This is really great for fraud detection, for example. Then structuring and normalizing data for improved context. That's similar to the increased information value, so very related. It's about cleaning up the data, getting it into a better shape overall. Then you can start your unified analytics already from OpenPipeline. You trigger Davis events, so Davis problem analysis. You can send notifications. You can start a workflow. All of that directly at the ingest in real time. And OpenPipeline addresses the high and hyper scalability demands that we see at our customers today. And we're further investing here into making it more scalable, more cost effective, so our customers don't have to care, whether we will be able to manage whatever comes here.
Yeah, and I think to wrap this up, or to give you a recap on what I see here, this is our data pipeline where any type of data, and I think this is important: logs, metrics, traces, events, anything that comes into Dynatrace, you can basically enforce centralized rules on that data that gets ingested, whether it should really be stored or not be stored, whether it should be cleaned up, whether it should be masked. whether they want to extract data. And I think this is so powerful. I know there's sometimes I get the questions, how does this relate to what OpenTelemetry collectors can, for instance, do? Because an OpenTelemetry collector provides similar capabilities from ingest, processing, and then exporting. We're doing this here, as you said, at scale, where all of your data ends up. That means you can centrally enforce all this, and we're doing this at high scale. And this is what I see the big value of. Also, what I hear from our users, they can trust that Dynatrace OpenPipeline and then Grail can ingest really data from across all of the environments and then centrally enforce all these rules.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would also say that one of the big upsides here of OpenPipeline versus an OpenTelemetry collector is that we manage it for you.
Yeah.
So the OpenTelemetry collector, and we're not replacing the OpenTelemetry collector. It still has a place. It's very valuable. You can feed from your OpenTelemetry collector into OpenPipeline because some use cases are just better solved in your own environment with your own infrastructure. So it's about having a good mix.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's dive into some feature details, to get a better understanding, because so far we were quite abstract. What does this all mean? So I have an example here. It's quite dense, but we walk through it. So this is an incoming log line, and I've shortened it. So this is a monster log line. Like I wouldn't even. It's a document almost. So to make this usable, OpenPipeline is the perfect fit. So you can parse this whole string. It's a really long string into a structured object, as you see. So on the left side, it's just one line that goes on and on and on. And on the right side, you see a nicely structured here in the form of a JSON representation. The object with types. You see strings. You see booleans. You see numbers. So that's the parsing that you do. Then you can map, for example, map a number to clear text. So that also helps the understanding when you query it, you see a nice text, an explanation, a label, instead of a number when it comes in. Then you can map it to a Boolean. That's also really useful. And hashing of sensitive information that, so a username, for example, you don't want, in many cases, you don't want to have that. An email address, you don't want to have that in your data. But it's still, you might be interested, how many users did I have? And for that, it's not good enough to mask it. There you can put some asterisks somewhere. That's not a good idea. No, if you hash it, then you can keep the uniqueness of the data while making it undecipherable.
Yeah.
So that's what you can do as an example here.
Cool.
The next example is data extraction. You were already mentioning that we are open to all different kinds of data. It's about logs, events, and metrics and spans. And now the big value that we bring now with Dynatrace is also the domain-specific expertise. So we have the application security solution, for example. And application security is, in most cases, not working directly with logs, but they're working with a subtype of events, with security events. And the same is true for our automations or delivery applications. So we have software delivery lifecycle events. And it might sound a bit like, yeah, but we have the log lines. Why should we do that? And there are lots of upsides to working with the domain-specific data types. So in the example here, you see a log line that contains security-relevant information. And that log line can stay as a log line, with all its access rights, with all its retention policy. You don't have to bother, because you just copy the most important information into the security event. You send it in again through the security events pipeline, and there you have all the things that are relevant for security. You have compartmentalized there. So logs stay logs, and then security events stay security events. You might have different retention times. You might have different access patterns for those. Our apps are, of course, optimized to analyze. And it also makes your query cheaper because you don't have to sift through terabytes or petabytes even of log lines. You can just search through a much smaller sets of security events. That's the power of data extraction here.
Exactly. And then I think the use case that always comes to mind on my end, this is a great use case. Another one would be, you talked about software delivery lifecycle events. We are ingesting a lot of data, whether it's from GitHub, from GitLab, from Jira, from all of these tools, and they all have their own format. But if you're sending those into OpenPipeline, then you can extract the relevant information for, let's say, a pipeline start, a pipeline finished, a deployment, because these are significant events and we can standardize those. But we can standardize and extract this information centrally in OpenPipeline so that you end up having a pipeline start, pipeline end, deployment, test start, test finished, release event. And this is also where OpenPipeline is really cool. And then you can store this data in different buckets, as you call it, right here, and then optimize the processing of it. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, exactly. So regardless, you can use GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, all of them, or all kinds of CI services at the same time. In Grail, the most important data will look the same. So as you're saying, pipeline start of the deployment pipeline, you have one field that you query and you get all of the events from all of these services. I think that's really a great comfort here.
Yeah.
The last example that we dive into is metric extraction. Even though Grail is great at querying large amounts of data, it's still the more data there is, the longer it takes, and the more it costs. So for some cases where upfront that you want to look at this data regularly and you're only interested in some parts, in some interesting parts, then you want to extract a metric. That's really the way to go here. So here I have an example where we extract a metric from a log line that's coming in from a web server. So we are interested here in the response time of the request, and we want to split it by the path, the URL path, and the status that has been responded by the web server. So the response code, the HTTP response code. It's quite easy in OpenPipeline. You create a processor here. We will dive into that concept later. A metric extraction processor. You match it for the log lines that are coming from this web server. You define, I'm interested in the service value because that's where the time is. You give it a name, so the metric key, and you provide us the dimensions that you are interested in for querying later on. Press save, and from that point on, you can even discard the log line if you have no more particular use for it, or you put it into a short time retention bucket, or and your metric can stay with you then for a longer time.
Cool. And I assume I can also extract multiple metrics, for instance, from
Absolutely.
the same log line if I want to, because in this case, bytes sounds like an interesting
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Wow.
Cool. So then I'd like to give an overview of the concept that we have in OpenPipeline to manage all this ingest processing that we have been talking about. And we have one central aspect that we've added, especially in comparison to the ingest processing that we had so far, and it's the concept of routing and pipelines. Yeah. So at the start, you see from left to right in this blue box, you see from left to right, data is coming in, and on the right side, it's going to Grail. And in the middle, we have OpenPipeline. So when it's coming in, it comes in through what we call an ingest source. And an ingest source is a representation of your data provider. So in our case, we start with our own ingest sources that are the one agent or an extension. And also the API endpoints are represented as an ingest source. So In events, we already have that feature, and we will also add it to logs and spans later on, where you can create your own ingest sources, which will give you a lot of control over what can a team ingest, and it gives you the knowledge of where does data come from. Without even looking into the data, because in many cases, you need to have the right field, and some services might not even give you a field that helps you identify the service. So with these ingest sources, you can always be sure this is the data that's coming from that point, and you can already associate some processing with that, some filtering or some adding of fields or something like that. So then at the other end, we have the pipelines where all of the real ingest processing happens. So the reshaping of the records and the extraction, assigning of permissions, and in between we have this routing rectangle here. And routing means that we decide for each record individually to which pipeline it goes. So that brings an opportunity, for example, where you can create a pipeline for each team, and each record will find its way to that pipeline. And the team can only work on the data that is assigned to them and doesn't see any other data.
Cool. So Thomas, just one quick clarification. That means, let's assume I have a log ingest. We're sending all the logs in. I can then say if a log has a certain attribute, let's say it has an attribute for the environment, let's say production.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feed it into the pipeline for production. If it's non-prod, I feed it into a different pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's even rather coarse-grained. So you would even go deeper usually. So maybe container name or the Kubernetes pod name or something like that.
Cool. Perfect.
Okay, then let's start looking into the application. So this is how this concept is represented in the OpenPipeline application. On the left side, you see all the data types that we support, and this is already quite a long list, but it will get even more extensive. So OpenPipeline will cover all the data types that are coming into Dynatrace. Even, and I think that's one of the great things that we set out here to do. We want to really give a lot of control to our customers. And you see here on the bottom of the list, you see system events. So these are our own events. We're exposing them. We don't, in this case, we don't let customers reshape them, because that would defeat the purpose of these events. They are audit events, but you can trigger a workflow from those. You can send a notification, or you can even extract a metric. So app updates, for example, is something that goes through here. You can trigger a notification for an important app update. You can measure app updates if you're interested in a metric.
That's cool. Yeah. Wow.
Even for each query, we create an event as well. So every query that somebody does in a notebook or in a dashboard, it creates an event. All these events go through system events, so you can even have full transparency into your billing. So there are really great options that you can that help get control or stay informed.
Yeah, perfect. Wow.
In the middle of the screen, we see the main interface for configuring the data type that you have selected, and you see from left to right the ingest sources, the routing, and the pipelines. And we go a bit deeper. So this is the routing concept explained in more detail. So on the left side, we again see the data providers, then ingest sources, and from all these ingest sources, we're here this is the example for logs. All logs come together at this point at the top of the routing, and then you see this column of matching conditions. So these matching conditions are evaluated one after each other from top to bottom, and the one that matches, this is then the one that determines the pipeline where the record is sent to.
Understood.
Yeah, and it's important to understand that every record goes through only one pipeline. Yeah, and we've already heard from customers that this is a bit of a limitation, and we're fully aware as we said earlier, we're rather in an early phase of OpenPipeline, so we're already working on a concept that improves this, where you can combine many pipelines. We're talking about our own pipelines that we provide for technologies that come with extensions or with an application. Can combine those, or you can create your own global pipeline. So maybe you have a global bucket assignment that you don't want your teams to interfere with. So you put all of that global bucket assignment, maybe even together with security context assignment, and also chargeback feature that's upcoming, where you for internal revenue control. Put all of those in a global pipeline, combine it with your team pipelines, and then your teams, they can do the processing, they can do metric extraction. They have no way to override your bucket assignment rules.
Got it.
So that's we're aiming for release in mid 25 here.
Perfect. And what I see, so you said a log comes in, the first matching rule will then define the pipeline, and then the default is then the classic pipeline, as we call it, the built-in. So that means if no matching routing exists, it always then goes through what we call the classic pipeline.
Yes, exactly. So this is ensuring a seamless migration. So if you start using OpenPipeline, everything keeps working as it did before. Because all the data goes through the routing table and it ends up in the classic pipeline, which you find in the classic settings interface. And you can then migrate at your own pace parts of your data into these new OpenPipeline pipelines. There's no rush there, classic pipeline is there. It's super efficient. So underneath, we even replaced it with the new OpenPipeline component. It just looks the same on the outside, works, highly efficient and fast underneath. So we wanted to ensure a seamless migration, and we know that it's always a bit unpleasant if you're forced. We're deprecating this feature. You need to move things. Here you have time, and it's really important because when you change an ingest rule, you also change a lot of data in Grail that you cannot update then anymore. It's kind of written in. Okay, cool. So here again, an explanation of the routing, because we get so many questions. I think it's really worth doing it a bit more in detail. So the green arrow is representing a record that comes in, and when it comes in, it starts to be matched against the first matching condition here in that table. If it doesn't match, it goes to the next matching condition. You see these are DQL matching conditions. You can directly copy and paste them from your notebooks, from your dashboards, from all these
all the filters, basically, right? I mean, these are all filters,
Yes, exactly. And also, if you use the Logs app, or if you use some, maybe you even have we provide now in notebooks interfaces so that you don't have to use DQL. You can use that to create your filters. Then you open up the DQL box, copy the DQL, paste it here, and you can directly use it. So the record is evaluated against each of these matching conditions, and the one matching condition that matches, this is the one then where the data is where the record is sent to that pipeline. Here in this case, we have the front end reverse proxy, and that's also a pipeline that we will look into more deeply and in our demo.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so then maybe a short look into how is a pipeline configured. So in the pipeline, you see these stages. At the top, we have processing, metric extraction, data extraction, permissions, so to define the security context for record-based access in Grail, and storage to define the buckets. And we have the same concept throughout OpenPipeline. On the left side, you have always a list of processors, and you have different types of processors. Here we have some a technology bundle, which is a really great out of the box feature. You don't have to have a lot of knowledge, but if you happen to have an Nginx logline, you put in the bundle, and Dynatrace will parse it nicely for you.
Yeah.
And below that, we have a custom DQL processing.
Yeah.
On the right side, very important, the preview. So if you've ever done any ingest processing, you know that without a preview, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's a lot of trial and error, and so you immediately see how this looks like. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and after you press save, it immediately goes to the ingest and is in effect. The change is in effect.
Perfect. So Thomas, this was an overview of what is OpenPipeline, why we built it, and now also the concepts with how then data flows through the pipelines, how you can configure it. We will demo all of this in the separate session, so folks, check out the link. But now, as a final step, I would be interested in what is coming. Just maybe a quick outlook. As today, at the time of the recording, it's January 2025. I'm sure you have a lot of stuff on the roadmap.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So for this year, we're focusing on getting to higher scale even. So we're already at a petabyte per day. That's kind of the measure that we have, how much per day. And we're aiming for more. We're also onboarding all the data types. So on the other hand, it's also so far we were focused on logs, but spans is already going through OpenPipeline. So we're getting closer to our target of covering all the data types. Then forwarding to external targets, I think, is a really, really important feature. We have many customers that are in a migration situation or that have a specialized tool that they want to use for their data. So maybe a SIEM solution or something, or maybe a business solution. And so we want to ensure that customers can send all of the data that comes into Dynatrace also to another target and use it there. Then very important for this scalability aspect of the management are the fine-grained permissions. So we plan for each pipeline gets its own permission, and also the ingest sources get their own permissions. Then the composable pipeline feature that I was talking about before. Several UX improvements. Yeah. So preview, for example, you saw that we have a preview for a processor. We're going to offer preview for the full pipeline.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it's really, really, really great feature. You see the side effects, which metrics are going to be generated, which data types are going to be extracted. We're going to be able to capture data from the pipeline so that you don't need to go to Grail, but you just capture it directly from the ingest and use it direct in your preview. And enrichment. So static data enrichment, you upload a CSV file, for example. Maybe you have a product name that you want to map to your product ID. So product ID comes in log, and you want to add the name. And the geolocation enrichment, opening it up to customers.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. That's a lot of stuff that you already have on your plate. And I know this is not the last year we're working on this, so there's more coming, obviously, afterwards. Cool.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're cooking with ideas.
Yeah.
And really excited here.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else before we wrap up?
I just want to mention that, of course, we have documentation up, and we're constantly improving it. We're listening to feedback. What do we need to change? What's missing? And we have this community feedback channel, quite active. I'm personally there answering questions. Also, others of the team are there. So everybody, please use it. Give us feedback. We're really happy to hear all of the also good stories. If you have a good story about how OpenPipeline is useful for you, just look into our community.
Perfect. And folks, these links, they will also be found in the description of the video, so you can then just click on them there. And with this, Thomas, I want to say thanks again. Let me just bring us back to the big screen somehow. I wanted to make sure that we're both here. Here we go. Thank you so much. And now I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to the live demo, which we will record in a separate session. So check out the link to the next video. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you, Andy.
Bye.
Thanks everybody for watching.